All right, well, this is part 2 on my video on giving children of divorce a voice. I'm not trying to torture those of you who are divorced, though. If we don't give these kids voices, they become adults, and the adults perpetuate the problems, and the adults are broken and hurting, and then they go on to recreate the same problems often. So I just wanted to do my part in making sure we understand that these people who are, we have a society full of walking injured, and we need to do our best as adults, as Christians, to carry the cross ourselves and not them. There was, for those of you that didn't see the last video, I am reading out of Layla Miller's book, Primal Loss, which chronicles the responses of, I believe she has 79 or 80 adult children of divorce who answered anonymously how their parents' divorce affected them. The reason I'm doing this, as I said before, is so that we can learn, if you are a child of divorce, to go ahead and start speaking. We can no longer remain silent so that we don't hurt the feelings of our parents who are hurting us. Isn't that kind of funny that children say that they want to remain anonymous and not answer publicly about their pain because they don't want to hurt their parents? Yet their parents were the ones that hurt them. We inflict the pain on our kids, and we should be the ones that say, I won't do it. I won't do it. I'm gonna save you from the pain. Well, there is a question in this book that Layla Miller, who collected all of these opinions, all of these responses, said, this next question garnered more profanity from the respondents than did any other question. And the question was this: what do you want to say to people who say that children are resilient and kids are happy when their parents are happy, and that kids of divorce will be just fine and will go on to live successful lives? The first response in here, and it's lengthy, so I'll just read the first paragraph, says, remember, this is an adult child of divorce who says this: divorce is simply a bloodless form of child sacrifice. Nothing more, nothing less. My grandparents' generation had to deal with a lot: war, undiagnosed PTSD, and alcoholism. But they had a noble idea that you sacrificed your own happiness for your children's well-being. You took all the heartache so that they didn't have to. Certainly bad marriages also hurt children of that era, but at least they had a noble concept of selflessness at the heart of family life. And before I read some other responses, I just want to say to you, there's so many of you I'm working with. You're in such painful marriages. I get it. I wanted to leave my own. I did leave my own for 4 years. So I am not judging you, no matter what you may want to think, because this may hurt. Because I'm not judging you. But I do want to say, if you're considering divorce right now, don't do it. If your spouse is being ugly, if you feel that he or she's a narcissist, which that one gets me every time. If you're saying, well, his or her words are emotionally abusive, well, let's check those first. There are some that are emotionally abusive, and I've done videos on it, and I'll talk a little bit more again in another video about what's really abuse. Are they just being mean and using profanity? Are you also speaking in the same way back to them? But what I'm saying here is, regardless if there's infidelity, regardless if there's alcoholism, regardless if there is addiction, regardless if there is any of the things that people walk out on their marriages for. I'm not saying in cases of abuse that you stay in a house that is going to inflict abuse on a child. Do not, or on yourself, do not stay in that house, but it doesn't unmarry you. But before I do go on, actually, that's bringing up a point. I'm saying you suck up that pain so your kids don't have to. Do you realize that if you cut and run because you can't stand your husband, you hate your wife, that your kids are going to have more pain? Who would you rather have the pain, you or your kids? Stay married, please, for the love of God. And for the sake of your soul, stay married. Work this out. If you found yourself in an affair, find a way to get out of it. It is hard to do. I had to do it myself. But it's worth it in the end. Those feelings that you currently have for your mistress or mister are temporary if you work to fall back in love with your spouse. Because what I'm going to read here are what adult children of divorce have said about the pain of their parents' divorce. Another one I'll read, and I could read every one of these. Number 51 says, there are not vulgarities strong enough to express my hatred and disdain for these notions that kids are resilient. I have holes that will never be filled this side of heaven. If you're listening and you're contemplating divorce, that will be your child. I have another person that wrote, number 42, I was not resilient, but I didn't know that. I didn't recognize the gaping vacuum I tried to fill throughout my teen years. It's only now, in retrospect, that I see how all my destructive choices were the result of craving family, while at the same time fearing the fragility of the family. I regret the poor choices that I made. I mourn the murder of my unborn babies. I didn't know. I didn't realize. My family doesn't know about this. They don't need to. It's not their burden to bear. I recently told my husband that I don't have one truly joyful memory from my childhood. I had fun times, of course, but I do not have one meaningful, happy, secure family memory. Not one. What I found in this one here is this young lady has her abortions and feels this pain and says, my family doesn't know because they don't need to. So right here we have proof that there is a child trying to spare her family of pain. The same parents that didn't spare her. Isn't that ironic? Number 53 writes, children survive abuse, poverty, starvation. That doesn't mean we should purposely inflict those things on them. I grew up in a generation of children whose parents were divorced. I dated from that pool, and the hidden wounds made relationships difficult and often dysfunctional. Moving forward to marriage was certainly complicated. I'm just looking at this and debating if I should read some of these. These are all ripping my heart out. The first paragraph of this next child says, the old kids are resilient and kids are happy when their parents are happy and kids can go on to live happy, successful lives. Yes, I've heard. I can tell you that, like most lies, there's a grain of truth in each statement. From all outward appearances, I am an awesome example of a child of divorce who did well. I'm married to the same man for 23 years. I appear to have raised and continue to raise wonderful, happy children, and I live in a decent home in a decent neighborhood without drama. But that's not how you really measure life, is it? You can't see struggles that are kept behind the scenes. You don't see years and years of tears in the night from a sad and lonely marriage. If I believed with any ounce of sincerity that kids are fine after divorce, I'd have divorced 17 years ago. Yes, kids may be resilient, but do they deserve brokenness? Do they deserve division? Do they deserve visitations and custody agreements and holidays straddled and tugged between parents and grandparents? I hear people say, I'd die for my kids. And I always wonder if they'd be willing to live for them. Because I can say that living for them, in my experience, is really hard. It is hard to persevere for the sake of others. She goes on, there's so much I could read, but let me read another one from person number 57. People who say that kids are resilient are lying to themselves. The kids may grow up to be successful like I did, but the psychological damage will always occur in the child. It just will. You can't tear up a child's foundation of security, which is their parents' marriage, and expect them to be fine. They will always have those wounds and scars they'll have to deal with. Maybe they'll be able to cope well with it, but the fact is they will have something to cope with that a child from an intact family will not. Another person writes, those are platitudes to assuage guilty consciences. Kids can be resilient. My little sister was resilient. She's a successful adult. Divorced parents are all she has ever really known. But as I said earlier, I've seen the opposite. Another person, number 48, writes, I remember when my mom said that she and my dad had important news to tell my sisters and me, and she said not to worry, that nobody was sick, and that everything was going to be okay. Married couples with children who are considering divorce need to be told that it is not going to be okay. It is not going to be okay. They are going to affect their lives and their kids' lives and their grandchildren's lives forever. Oh my gosh, there's so much I want you to hear from this book. One person writes with exclamation points, no! Children say what they think you want to hear because when they don't get you full time, they want your attention. They could possibly hide their pain until they find an outlet, no matter if that outlet is 10 years later in the form of sex, alcohol, drugs, or worse. You can never just assume. Kids have it written on their hearts what a good and holy family is supposed to look like. And when you get a divorce, you just scribbled all over their perfect picture. You cannot erase that with some new paper and crayons. Oh gosh, guys, I tell myself I'm going to stop, but then I've marked up so many papers. Okay, I'm going to read you 3 more. Again, these people are all responding to the question, what do you think about people who say kids should be resilient, children of divorce? And this, number 11, writes, I missed my home. I missed the safety and security of family. They're blurry memories now. My brother and I have had trouble in relationships. We still talk about how messed up it was for us, for our parents to divorce. I'm 46 and he's 48. 46 and 48, and they're still talking about how it messed him up. 2 more. Person number 70. No matter how resilient and successful children of divorce end up being, they will always carry a terrible, heavy load of grief and sadness. With God's grace, they will learn how to manage everything, but these desperately deep-reaching, tragic emotions will never, ever go away. And the last one I'll read is from person number 55. I'm only reading part of his or her response, and it says, life is about sacrifices, big ones, little ones. When done out of love, it is so much better, and the rewards are so much greater than you or I being happy 24/7. No one ever said it would be easy. Look at the cross. Do you think that was easy for Christ? No, but he did it anyway. And he did it because he loves us. And so what? You can't stay in your marriage and love your spouse like you promised to do until this life ends? Why? Because you're unhappy? Get over yourself. The world does not revolve around you. Stop being selfish. Pray, stay, and pray, and repeat. Put a smile on your face and speak to God in your heart until the season of sadness within your marriage passes. And it will pass in one way or another. Be true to your vows. Be true to your children, and be true to yourself in upholding the in good times and bad times part of your marriage. Make yourself little in the eyes of God, your spouse, and your children, so that you can find your lasting joy. So that's just some responses from the adult children of divorce. I was originally doing this part 2 for the kids to say, please, all of you who are children of divorce, speak out. Whether you do it in writing, whether you do it on a podcast, whether you write a letter to mom and dad, whether you tell other people, whether you fight for someone else who's about to enter into a divorce. Speak. And speak with absolute certainty and clarity, and do not mince your words. Let people about to enter divorce know how you feel. Because no one else is giving a voice to the children of divorce. So, shouldn't it be you? And I want to repeat one last time. If you are right now on the cusp of divorce, you hate your spouse, you loathe him or her, and you want to get out, don't do it. Don't do it. Sacrifice yourself for the sake of those humans that you, in your love with that person you now hate, created. God will get you through it. And even if it's miserable 90% of the time, when you die and go to heaven, your reward will be great. Why? Because you carried your cross and you didn't put it down and force your kids to pick it up. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. You're listening to Breakfast with Bacon. Look me up.